Welcome to the Birds and the Bees podcast. This is Braxton Dutson.
That's the key. People aren't talking about it.
Everybody needs to know that porn is not a documentary.
It's not like if we don't talk to kids about sex and sexuality, they're not going to hear about it. They're just not going to hear about it from us.
They have tons of questions, they just don't know how to ask them.
All you have to do is be one chapter ahead. You don't have to know everything. Just one chapter ahead of wherever your child is.
Greetings, Hive Mates. This is Braxton Dutson. I'm looking forward to this upcoming episode. So this is Birds and Bees podcast, and I am really excited to bring this episode to you. I wanted to do some interviews with individuals that may not have been exactly that they've gone to school per se for an experience, but I find that I talk with a lot of parents, a lot of individuals with a lot of great knowledge about how they talk to their kids or family about sexual health issues. And so I wanted to give some time to that, to make this more of a touch on the real experience that people go through. People like you and me that are taking it day by day. They're in the trenches with their kids. They're talking to each other in their partnerships, and they're working along like you and I are. So today we are interviewing Leki, and we're going to get into a little bit more of his history in this episode. But know that these episodes are meant to give you an insight as to what someone else is doing in their experience. This is not meant to say that this is how you should live life or how you need to do things. This is to give you perspective of there are therapists, there are education programs that will state and tell you what ways may be best that we see from science, and then there is the actual practical application. And I wanted to bring practical application so that you can take what is helpful for you and leave what's not. Continue improving yourself, bettering yourself as time goes on. I really like this interview. I am excited to hear what you guys think about it. I have other individuals I'm excited about interviewing, as well as continuing with a consistent basis of interviewing another therapist that I've usually done on Birds and Bees podcast. So stay tuned for that. And let's get into the episode. Thanks for tuning in. Birds and Bees podcast is your go-to place for sexual health education for parents and clinicians. I have a new webinar for how to conceptualize and address why your children are looking at pornography and how to best address it. It's called Help. I caught my kids looking at porn. Now what? Send me an email at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to receive the link for the webinar. I currently provide supervision for therapists who are looking to become sex therapists. I also provide presentations to both large and small groups of religious and clinical individuals. All right, starting into the podcast, I'm really excited. This was a concept that I was really excited about doing. I've been doing this podcast for multiple years. We're in 55, 56 episodes. And I haven't. I've only interviewed one other. I interviewed a couple to ask about connection that they were having and like how sexual connection and their experience. And it actually did really well because I think people will start to connect more of like a real life experience. And so I haven't. This is my first go, and I'm like, you know what? Let's do this. People that are actually having these conversations and talking to their partners, their kids about sexual health, living sexual health principles as I've either talked about them or just how we've put them into action, because I find that people put information that they hear from others and they start going, oh, that's real life.
Yeah.
And I can put that together.
Direction,
right?
Yeah, rather than, I guess, having the media do it for us. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've brought you on, Leki. I'd love to introduce you a little bit, have you introduce yourself and who you are, kind of what makes you you. I've been following you on Instagram, and also you and I, we've had a relationship as a tattoo artist, and there's been a lot of cool things that you've come out on top of, not just being a tattoo artist, but also you're all across Salt Lake City with different murals and stuff. So I'll let you kind of take it over from there. Tell me about yourself.
Cool, yeah. So my name is Leki. I got into the craft of tattooing in about 2009 is when I served my apprenticeship or my internship. From there, I just had like small experiences of like business licenses and all that stuff. And it was a collaboration between my wife and I, you know, and then when she had invested into me as well. That's when we kind of started sprouting off into other businesses, and we opened up a few other small businesses from there. I've always had an artistic background because of my brother. My brother, just born in the 80s and being raised in the 90s, hip hop culture. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there was like a few elements, which was like graffiti, turntablism.
Oh yeah.
MCing, and forget the other ones, but yeah. but yeah, so I was always surrounded by arts and just great mentors. Still am till this day. I'm forever the students. But yeah, just from there, my curiosity just for the growth in art and all that stuff just continued to grow, and just coattailed my brother throughout all that, and eventually led me to where I am today, which is a full-time artist. And I hate to say I'm an artist. I just feel like I just practice the craft of art. I hate titling myself as that, but yeah. So that just led me to just all sorts of like business adventures. And
currently you've got Artsy by Nature.
Yeah.
And then you've got the cafe.
Yeah, the cafe. So that was the tattoo side at one point, but after COVID, we kind of came to a realization that, even though you're self-employed, you kind of become a slave to that as well. You know what I mean? So like, just because you like make the leap and you're not doing a 9 to 5, you're kind of still a slave. You know what I mean? So we kind of came to a realization of that. We wanted to balance our time and energy, between our family a lot more. So we started backing off of like business and management, and wanted to get into more like residual income, more like passive income. I think probably everyone's goal, right? Work less, make more.
Yep, I'm all about that.
Yeah. So we done some pretty big business changes last year. So we ended up having a tattoo supply store as well, and then we relocated from a location in 2000. We had a business so we first opened up our tattoo studio, then we opened up our tattoo supply, and then we started experiencing tremendous growth. And then 2019 is when we decided to relocate to a bigger location.
Oh, nice.
And then from there, when COVID happened, we transitioned our tattoo supply store into a barbershop.
Oh, nice.
And then that's when my wife and I just decided like we wanted to, start focusing more on residual income or passive income, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, and then so now that's what we're doing now. We're just kind of backing off and just trying to collect, man. That's our new thing. We just want to collect.
Good call. Well, if people want to go, want to find you, where can they find the cafe and as well as see you?
So we are located in Mill Creek, and the suite's broken up into 3 different suites, or the building's broken up into 3 different suites, which is 120, 124, and 128. Okay. And that will be 128 East, 3900 South, Mill Creek.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. And the cafe's called...
it's Cafe Lounge right now. Yeah.
Cafe Lounge.
LAU or LAOUNG. So, because my wife's from Laos, or she's half Thai and half Laos, so
that makes
sense.
Cafe
Lounge.
Yeah. Well, I've had food there before, so I totally I would encourage anyone to go try it out because it's good stuff.
Cool, appreciate it. Yeah, it's more a little bit on the authentic side, so it's it's definitely something you're not just gonna find anywhere. And it's kind of like the mom and pop kind of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's been good stuff. Well, and speaking of mom and pop, you're coming straight from dad duty.
Yeah. I'm all in my George Costanza gear, sweats and everything. So yeah, awesome. And so just got done with kids sports and all that, and just getting my mind ready to go and focus on this now. So
yeah, tell me about it. So when it comes to kids, you got 2 of them, right?
3 altogether.
3 altogether.
So
okay.
It goes girl, boy, and girl. So
girl, boy, and girl.
Yeah, all a year apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, going into high school.
No kidding. Right into high school.
Yeah, our youngest is barely in middle school, but yeah, the other 2, the 2 older ones are, since they're a year apart and they're close in age, they're both going into freshman year. So
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. That's a big reality check for me and my age. Almost 40. Oh, actually, it was my birthday yesterday too.
Oh, so happy birthday, man!
Thanks, man. Yeah,
that's way cool. So man, you just barely 40 then.
No, so I thought I was turning 38, but my kids and my wife corrected me. I just turned 37.
You just turned 37, okay.
Yeah,
but
so
you're getting close to the 40s, all right.
I'm glad I was a year behind than a year forward.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So in this fatherhood experience that you've had, I'm curious about the first in starting with having kids and being with your partner. I mean, there's been ups, downs, lefts, rights, causes, effects, all sorts of things that you've experienced, I'm sure. I'm curious for you, because this is a sexual health podcast. When they were younger, or has there ever been a time that you started having thoughts about your children and their sexuality, who they are as a sexual being? Has that ever come up for you?
It hasn't actually. They would. It's obviously in their environment. Just with the times we're in it, we're living in now.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it being projected in media, just in all sorts of different angles. But yeah, my kids have brought it up to us as far as other people's issues that they're going through in their own school. Mm-hmm. But personally, no, my kids, they're pretty solid, man. Like I couldn't have asked for better children,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I told my oldest at one point that, because she was kind of venting about what was going on in her school, about some of the topics you brought up,
Mm-hmm.
and I just told her, yeah, it's cool, just do your thing, though, don't worry about other people. Everyone's going through their different challenges, Like everybody's got different things that they're going through. But I did tell her, though, that at one point, your hormones are going to hijack your intellect, and she's at that age, where it's not really happening, but it's kind of happening, you know what I mean? And so I just told her, just be aware of that, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's not even them talking, sometimes they're just going through that phase. And yeah, I just told her, don't judge, because she's going to be going through that as well. But we'll see, though. We'll see how good the discipline is, right?
Totally. I mean, so you said don't judge. How do you teach non-judgment, or in a world where there's nothing but so much judgment around? How have you found ways to support them in learning to not judge?
I found ways to support learning not to judge by teaching them that there's no such thing as right or wrong. You know what I mean? There's just people's realities, and then there's, you know what I mean? Like, we kind of went through it through our session, but there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's only definitive and non-definitive, and definitive decisions would be whatever supports your reality, and then non-definitive would be what goes to, against it. You know what I mean? And that's it. And so, it's unfortunate, but we kind of live in a duality of reality, right? Like everything is two, if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
You got, your mind, your body, you got night, day, earth, sky, you know what I mean? Everything is two, and unfortunately right or wrong falls under that, but there is no such thing as either or when you realize the concept that, we all both are complementary to each other, male, female, alpha, beta, light can't shine without darkness.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You can't grow without being uncomfortable, you know what I mean? So it's just, just teaching them little things like that, just things that they wouldn't learn normally in schools, or, you know what I mean? Just thinking a little bit deeper, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Just kind of opening your mind a little bit more. And I've actually been able to tap into that just through my wife and I's like experiences in life, through business, through family, through art, through just everything in general. I've been able to kind of see past, or actually probably see more than what's presented in front of us that we think,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always like a bigger picture, but it's hard to see until you unfocus.
Absolutely.
When you unfocus, everything comes into focus. But when you focus too hard, you kind of create tunnel vision for yourself, and you don't get to see a lot of those little lessons that are hidden in between that, in between the lines.
When you're trying too hard, when it's trying to get it completely correct.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you try too hard, you're creating resistance, and then that starts to affect the perception. But
I really like that, especially in the sense that as a therapist, as a person that's working with these parents that are asking, I frequently get the question of when. When do I talk to my kids about sexual health? When do I do this? When do I do that? And I want to make sure that my child never gets any sexual shame. I'm going to make sure that my child gets this or doesn't get that. And oftentimes the way that you're talking, I agree with that. We can start forcing something and try and force our child or ourselves to do something. We ultimately create resistance and a pushback from yourself, your belief system, your child, and oftentimes I love the way that you're talking about rolling with it, or those are the words that I would say is rolling with it, where you're just kind of going with a flow.
Yes.
And having information, educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way I'm hearing you say it, you approach this is helping them kind of get some concepts, but not trying to force something to happen.
Yeah, because if you think about it, we've never been able to control anything, right? Like we can even use our own parents as a great example. Like how many times did they try to control us to do something, right? It never did. We just like made us more curious, or made us, just do something completely opposite than what they wanted, And so, yeah, you can't ever control everything, and just you have to appreciate everything that's happening. Like everything is happening in divine order. You know what I mean? You can manipulate things, but you can't control. And I think manipulating it towards like a positive outlook on things, you know what I mean? To be more open-minded on things is the way to go, because even the term teaching is like a minor form of control, right? Because now we think we're hey, listen to me, you know what I mean? Like I know better than you, and that still creates a minor resistance,
Yeah.
And so my way of teaching my kids or just people in general is just lead by example, lead by example and plant seeds. And if they decide to water it one day, then they'll remember what you said, things will start clicking. And like I said, I think if you just start saying, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that, then it's kind of like, oh, that's cool, that's your perception, but like, I'm going through my own things and this is my own reality, and it's like you can't really listen to somebody else that's not going through it,
Yeah.
And there are some people who have been through it, but it's still different when you're going through it and they're not,
Absolutely. I think that plays into a fight that I'll see with preteens and teens and their parents.
Oh, yeah.
I've been 14 before, so I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately, I'll tell parents that's inaccurate.
It's almost ignorant, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because I was 14 once, but 14 years old, the easiest one is there wasn't cell phones around.
Yeah, they're living in a different world,
It's so totally different world.
Yeah, I've had that conversation a lot too lately in the past couple of years where, when we grew up, I always made that joke where it's like, when we were growing up, man, it was just like, don't join gangs, don't do drugs, don't get killed, and focus in school, right? Now it's like, man, protect your identity. If you know your identity, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just so much stuff going on right now, like, and they're exposed to so much more than we were as kids, and it's the mental battle that they're going through is crazy. They're going through a lot more than we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many parents that get the wide eyes when I tell them, like, hey, there's a really good chance. Research is showing us that by the age of 8 to 10 years old, they're being exposed to explicit material, sexual images or videos and things like that, just because things are so accessible nowadays, which is in its own right has its own ups and downs. And I think the thing that you commonly say is its own cause and effect.
Yeah.
Each part of those have
everything's a consequence.
Yeah, everything's got its consequence. Everything's a consequence. And so in having these conversations, and what I'm hearing is that there's a certain level of, if you can let go of what's right and wrong and what's supposed to happen, then it also helps take the pressure off as a parent to be, my child has to know this by this age, and then they need to make sure this happens, and so then this never happens. They'll never see sexual images. They'll never experience sexual pain because I'm going to teach them this thing, or I'm going to do this thing. Where I'm hearing you say that if you can teach them a concept of, hey, each decision you make has a reaction to it. Don't get caught up in judging other people.
Right.
And you're going to be experiencing your experiences, so honor those. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. I kind of compare it to, like, we're all climbing a mountain, right? And we're all trying to reach the same peak, but we all have different paths, you know what I mean, that we're going through. And so some might have more sleek rocks, you know what I mean? And some might be going through more, weathered or something. I don't know. But whatever it is, we're all going through it. Everyone's going through something. But, on the, as far as like, kind of lost my train of thought, but it's what I was saying too is that, man, I'm trying to get at daddy mode.
No worries, dude. No worries.
It kind of just came down to the concept of, like, there's sex and then there's sexuality, right? Because even though you can go with the flow with things like that, there is still a difference between, like, sex and sexuality, right? Because I think a lot of people don't understand that, sex is just nature's way of, our species survival. It's a biological need, and it was created for us to survive as a species. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think the issue is that sexuality. You know what I mean? They're two different things, because sexuality is like when we start getting our emotions involved. You know what I mean? And then
expression.
Yes, exactly. And that turns into pleasure and desire.
Love it.
There's a system that has been created to probably push that agenda a little bit more. You know, I noticed because I haven't watched TV in a long time, right? Just through like business and investing. But there was a time where, I think it was like during COVID, right? When we had all that extra time.
Oh, yeah.
We started just tuning in. I'm like, whoa, when did they start like normalizing all this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, I noticed the sex scenes are getting younger. You know what I mean? I noticed like it's in everything. It's in music. It's in like, it's like everything I see has alcohol and sex. You know what I mean? Like everything,
accurate.
right? Yeah.
Accurate.
And so, yeah, I think the best way to look at it too, like, is just teach them the nature side of sex. You know what I mean? It's there. It's not right or wrong. It's been like, for instance, when you came into the shop, and it might have sounded ignorant at the time, but I said it's just booty and dick. And what I meant by that is just nature has provided tools for us, you know what I mean, in order for us to complete that process of sex and to survive as a species, you know what I mean? And that's all it is. If we look at it anything more than that, that's when it turns into sexuality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I meant by it. And yeah, dude, it's just I don't want to say teach, but just express more sex as a natural form of, you know, survival, a biological need. And then sexuality is the, you know, temptation, or the he, she, like, oh, you know what I mean? Yeah. But really we're just, I mean, I heard something online one time which made perfect sense was, you know, we treat male and female as different species. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And it's so funny because, you know, if you think about it, it causes that curiosity and the, you know what I mean? And all that stuff in between all that. But really, we're the same. It's like, I think he used an example of like some walk around with our pockets in and pockets out. And I thought that was just a perfect example. And it's just like, oh, he's right, you know? But
yeah, same parts arranged differently, I think, is what Emily Goski says. When it's
exactly.
all about it, because we all inevitably in the womb, we all start out heading towards a female body.
Yeah. And
until
then that's it obviously changes into
Yep, we just get rearranged different.
Yes, exactly, man. And when you understand that concept, it's the same. You know what I mean? It's just, it's funny because you can break it down to the whole duality thing again that I mentioned. It's like male and female trying to be one again. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the constant flow in that.
Yeah.
So is that how you would end up, or have you, as you've talked with your kids about sexual health or the difference between sex and sexuality, or, I mean, have they come to you with questions? Has that been something that you've had to approach them, or have they approached you about questions about this? Because inevitably there's going to be curiosity.
Yeah. They'll ask, you know what I mean, if they have any questions or anything like that, but it's still very like minor stuff. My kids are still, at least from what I know, and if they're putting up a front or not, you know, but they're pretty innocent, man. Like, so one of the conversations that what I mentioned earlier that my kids came up to me about was just all their friends are dating but them, and you know they keep trying to pressurize them into doing it.
Yeah.
And my kids are just like, one of my kids made a joke about it, which was like, why would I want to start dating? Like, what are we going to talk about? Pencils and Capri Suns? You know what I mean? And so, and I was like, you know, that's cool. And then that's when I said, like, hey, I really respect and appreciate you saying that. And that's when I had mentioned, like, but, you know, there's going to come a time where, you know, hormones take over, hijack the system. And then, you know, those guys are probably the ones with the experience that you're going to need to go talk to. So, but yeah, you know, it's around the corner. My kids, you know, they haven't really like sat down and asked about it because I think they're too busy still trying to be a kid. You get what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't even ask them like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what I mean? I just allow it to happen. You know, I just allow them to do them. You know what I mean? They have their own lives, their own expectations, and they don't need any more pressure than they already have on them. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So,
yeah.
But when it does come up, though, I am gonna present it that way, you know,
in the way that you just talked to us about it.
I think that's the most appropriate, you know what I mean, the scientific side of it, or whatever you want to call it, you know? But yeah, I mean, that's all it is. And then, you know, when they start experiencing other things like that, then I'll break down the sexuality side of it, you know what I mean? And I won't even say you know, present it as the whole right or wrong thing. I'll just say like, hey, is it definitive towards what you want, or is it non-definitive, you know? But you still got to go out there and learn your own lessons on your own, and you know.
Yeah.
I'll be here when you need me.
So offering that, I'm going to be here if you got thoughts, questions. I'm going to be here to support. The other part is it sounds like you have a language, the way that you interact with them, so that this language is going to be the same in talking about sexual health in their questions. You're going to be using this similar pattern throughout their whole life, and so it's not going to be a new conversation for them. It's just going to be a different topic.
Yeah, it's actually been a system that I think about it. You know what I mean? That's been in my house, and even my wife has her own, because you know there's certain things a dad can teach, you know, a son and a daughter, and there's certain things that, you know, a mom can teach a son and a daughter. And so we both have similar systems in our house, you know.
Yeah.
My wife's a little bit more direct with it, you know.
So does she, if she's a little more direct, is she also on the same thought process of we're going to wait for our kids to approach us about sex or about puberty and things along those lines? Or is she one that's like, I'm going to tell them puberty is on its way and this is what it's going to look like, or sex is on its way, this is what it's going to look like?
Yeah, we don't plan on having conversations like that or time them or anything like that. Or it's more timing, actually. You know what I mean? Like, so
okay.
Whenever something gets brought up, we're like, boom, there's my foot in the door to lay some.
Oh, so you guys are constantly kind of on there it is. All right, here we go.
Yeah, okay. Because then you remember I said, like, if you start expressing a little too much, then it kind of becomes like they kind of feel like you're trying to control them and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
gotcha.
It's got to happen as naturally as possible.
So this is a big practice in going with the flow, the art side of things, just letting it be what it is.
Yeah, just let it go, you know, let it be. And if they don't, you know, because a lot of parents, what I noticed with our generation is we kind of broke that cycle of like, because old traditional parents, they're just like, hey, be quiet, get back, you know, hold the line, like no time for emotions, like, you know what I mean, your problems aren't problems.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, yeah, it's a lot of parents these days, we kind of broke that cycle, and we expect to be their friends and talk to me about everything, you know what I mean? But like I said, there's some things even friends can only talk to their, you know, to my kids about and things like that, you know? So, and I've already accepted that, you know, and I told, with one of my kids that said that they feel more comfortable talking to their friends about it. I said, oh, that's fine. I said, but just want to let you know, though, sometimes your friends aren't probably going to give you the most accurate.
Yes.
You know,
That's the piece.
They're going to tell you what they want you to hear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, if you want to help somebody, you tell them the truth. You know what I mean? If you want to help yourself, then you lie. You know what I mean?
There it is. Absolutely.
You tell them what they want to hear, you know? And so I just told them that, you know, and I just left it as that. And it's funny because that brought them more towards me. Like, they'll ask their friend, and I think they start realizing it doesn't sound accurate.
Bingo.
And
that's
then boom,
cool.
then they come to me and then they're like, hey, you know, so I kind of discussed it with my friend, but you know, what do you think? And I'm like, boom, they lay it down. And they're like, that makes more sense, you know. And I'm like, cool.
Oh,
See ya. Yeah.
I like that. So again, the openness that you experience with your kids.
Yeah. Because remember, you don't create resistance.
You don't create the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And then also on the top of opening the door, or not, you're not even opening the door, but you're saying your friends are going to talk about this. You're going to have this conversation, feel more comfortable with that. And if you have questions, I'm here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
Yeah.
And that open door helps support. Yeah, this doesn't feel right. Like it's almost this intuitive. You're supporting the growth of their intuition of what sounds right, what makes me confused, and now I know a place that I can go and I can clarify that with my parents.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is I always end it too with but you go out and do your own research as well. You know, don't believe everything I say.
Ooh.
I always tell them, go out there and, you know.
Which takes the teacher role off of you.
Yeah, because I'm.
You're not the all-seeing sage.
I'm a kid with them. You know what I mean? Like, there's still things I'm going through. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still a little kid as well. You know, so that's why I say I don't like to present myself as an artist either, because I'm still learning. I just practice the craft of art. You know what I mean?
Practice the craft, which you do a wonderful job.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Still got a long ways. I'm still a fragment of where I'm at, but a lot of this detachment from business and management is all towards growth too, towards my own art as well.
That's great. And and I think the other part is like there's not an arrival point. I don't know that I've ever heard of someone arriving, or maybe some people have said that they've arrived and they're a good artist or whatever it may be. That same thing goes with therapy or any craft that we've talked about. If someone's saying that they've got to a place where they've figured it out,
right? It's
kind of like, well, maybe you've done something that you really like, but there's always growth and movement, and
should be always, or there always should be, right?
Yeah.
But I think once you do start, that's why like even that goes towards me saying I'm an artist. Like, no, I'm by far, because I think there's still more to learn and grow to earn that title, you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just like what you said. I think when you start, I think words are spells, right? Like you keep saying you hate something, eventually you believe it, right? But then as soon as you keep saying you love something, then you know you eventually believe it too. So it can go both ways, right? And yeah, so I use words as wisely as I can. So I try not to say I'm an artist because, like I said, the moment I feel like I'm an artist, then it kind of stuns your growth that much, you know?
Because you don't need to grow.
Yeah, exactly. And we should always be growing, and growth is infinite. And, you know, if you stop growing, it's, you know, you probably, a lot of, like in the industry, what I've noticed is it's egos. You know, a lot of people's egos stop them from growing because, you know, once they done, you know, a few successful tattoos or art pieces, they're like, yep, I'm an artist, you know, I got it, I'm down, you know. And it's just like, no, man, that's just a fragment of it, you know. You gotta keep going. I had this artist work with me at one point, and on my Instagram, I had for like years and years, I was an apprentice, you know.
Oh yeah.
And he was asking the other artists, like, why does he do that? You know what I mean? Like, that people probably like, I don't want to come to this guy, you know what I mean? Because he's new. I said, because when do you ever stop learning, you know? And he couldn't even reply. He just kind of stopped and was just like, I said, right, you know, when do you stop? When are you a tattoo artist, you know? And he just, he's like, he couldn't answer. And I just said, exactly, bro. You should always be learning, you know what I mean? You should always be learning. You're always an apprentice, you know?
Yeah.
But
I think there's something to be learned about that once we're talking about kids too, is that it's not necessarily something that, I mean, you can learn a lot from your kids.
Oh yeah. That's why I don't ever want to consider myself a teacher, because I've learned as much as them or from them than they probably have ever learned from me. You know what I mean? Like they sharpened my discipline. If it wasn't for my kids' presence, you know, I wouldn't be doing a lot of these goals, like, you know, like effortlessly, because I'm just like, I don't give myself an excuse to not do it, you know.
Gotcha.
And just my kids' presence does that, and just all the other lessons that I learned from them, you know. I see a lot of me and them, and I'm like, man, sharpen that up, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 relationship. That's what parents need to understand. Everything is 50-50. It's always 50-50.
Beautiful.
And once you become 60-40, that starts to become control, you know what I mean? That means you're on top of them, but it's never like that, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how does the language start to show up for you in your relationship with your partner? How have you molded these spells?
Oh man, it's just 10 years of being next to each other, you know. It starts to rub off on each other, you know. Like the vibes and the energy, you know. It's always being transitioned back and forth, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's man, my wife, man, she was the biggest part of my growth in the beginning, you know what I mean?
Was she?
She pulled me out of the trenches.
She did.
Dusted me off, and you know what I mean, just made me who the man I am today. And if it wasn't for that, you know, I mean, I definitely wouldn't have come to a realization of a lot of this language that, you know, you're talking about.
Wow.
Because she definitely checked my ego, you know what I mean?
Oh, she did.
Yeah, because not like it was more of like, because coming from like a traditional family, you know what I mean? Like I was saying earlier, it's just like, hey, you know, shut up, bro. Like, your emotions don't mean shit. Like, just hold the line, keep going. You know what I mean? Like, there was no like affection in my family. You know, there was no like anything like that, and just a lot of like arguing and all that stuff. And that kind of projected into me growing up as well. You know, and like my previous relationships, I thought like arguing was normal and all that stuff, and which it can be in certain situations, but yeah. And so it was like the first time I was having a not an altercation, but just like a disagreement with my wife, you know. Start puffing up and everything like that, you know. And then my wife's just like, okay, you know, like sit down and, you know, have a seat and let's talk about it, you know. And I'm like, oh wait, I'm like, why can't we just sit down and talk about it, you know what I mean? And so immediately I was just like, whoa, this whole time I was like, thought we had to like duke it out and everything, but really we just talk, you know. If we respect each other, that was one thing she said. She's like, you know, if we respect each other and love each other, then we should talk about it and act like it, you know, and talk in that sort of manner.
So her invitation, and then your receptibility, you were receptive to an invitation to sit down versus like, no, this is how we do it.
Yeah, she reprogrammed my mind.
She reprogrammed it. She set it up.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, and so that was like a huge breaking point for me, because I realized, I was like, wow, you know, why couldn't we just sit down and talk about it? But I was programmed for my environment, right? Because my parents would always argue.
Oh, we all are.
Yeah. And so that was just my main breaking point. And then I was like, wow. And it was from there, I was like, I carried that to everybody. It wasn't even just my partner. It was like with my kids. It was with like, you know, artists that I worked with. It was, it just continued to project into my reality. And that was the first point where I was like, damn, I don't need to be, an asshole to get what I want or anything like that. Yeah.
Nice.
Or it's okay to have disagreements, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the wording that people typically ask is, what's a healthy relationship, which then I start to switch the words from healthy relationship to relational health.
Yeah.
Because a healthy relationship inevitably puts a judgment
exactly.
on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's same with like
or expectations.
Healthy sexuality is saying that there's a way to be sexually healthy, and there's some things that can typically, like on physical or emotional, but it can be so unique to each person.
Yeah.
Same with the relational health. So when you think of relational health, or when I say those words, what would you identify as some of the things that feel healthy in a relationship for you?
Things that feel healthy in a relationship for me. Let's see. I've gotten pretty comfortable, so I gotta dig some of this up.
For sure.
One thing is, a lot of people think that you can just fall into a relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But really, you attract it or you build it. And I think when you build a relationship, you work out a lot of those differences. You know what I mean? Because you realize, because a lot of people are trying to get into a relationship on similarities, but there's no such thing as that. Like, you are you, and I am I. You know what I mean? And that's the problem, is that we're trying to fuse those together to make one, right? One solid relationship. But really, it's actually about accepting differences. You know what I mean? And once you accept those differences, then nothing else really matters, because now you're like, oh, she likes this for this, and I like this for that, and it's okay. You know what I'm saying? But I think a lot of the issues are like, hey, she doesn't like what I like, and we can't do this and that, but my wife and I are actually we're pretty opposite. You know what I mean? Like, I do a lot of different things, like activities, and it's fine. Like, we both plan things, and then we come back together, and then we have our own personal time together and stuff like that. So I mean, it's okay. It's so the whole what did you rename it, the healthy relationship?
Oh, relational health.
Yeah, relational health. Yeah, it's it really just comes down to accepting each other's differences. You know what I'm saying? It's because it'd be pretty ignorant to think that you're going to find somebody out there who's exactly like you. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? It's a very ignorant.
Well, and even when I've seen people that are alike, some of those things, you don't get to an exact same liking. Even the same way if the sushi bake that you guys have over at the cafe lounge, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You may really like that dish, and I may really like that dish, but we may like that dish for different reasons, or we may have it into a certain level of love, and that's not wrong or right. We can be on the same page, be like, oh, we like the same foods. Well, even if you have a same belief system, a same thought process on how life needs to be lived or engaged, or things that you enjoy doing together, you can find people that are so similar, and you're going to find the difference within that similarity.
Accept the difference, right?
Yeah. And so accepting the differences is so important.
You both like the sushi bake, but you like the rice, and you like the seaweed or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But, yeah, exactly. And it's and most people would be like, oh, well, that's not cool, or something like. And it's just like, no, man, that's just your ego projecting, at that point. And,
totally.
Yeah. But as far as attracting a relationship, though, I think a lot of people don't realize that your reality is, goes back to the consequences, right? Everything we do is a consequence, and your reality is a projection of who you are at the moment, and because a lot of people back, when you're younger, you're always like, oh, I want this girl, she's up there, but you're still down here, right? But then when you do meet that girl, look at that big gap in between that you missed, what I mean, to make that relationship work, so you gotta make changes. And I tell people, if you want something good in your life, you gotta change something as well, and that's called creating space for that good thing to come in, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
It's hard to make change, hard to make space.
But when you do, though, you realize you start attracting better things in your life. Not even just relationships, right? Like job opportunities. Once you make that leap, you're like, oh man! All of a sudden, all these different opportunities start coming at you. It's But it's hard to explain that one though, because the hormones. You know what I mean? And just the what media projects out there, right?
Sure does. I'm fascinated. I appreciate your thoughts on relational health, because again, each person sees it in a little different way of what is healthy for them.
Yeah.
You can go with what science says is healthy. You can go with what the hard part about that is that relational health is like, well, what is important to you? I like the way that you were talking about that. What are the things that do you like, and what things are important to you? What are your values?
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to meet up on all of those, because in the research that we experience, I think it's John Gottman that talks about, I mean, he's been studying and watching people fight, watching relationships be together, and do all these things. He's done nothing but relational studies for 20, 25 years. And has come up with, essentially, it's like roughly 67% of issues in a relationship really aren't solvable, quote unquote. Like, that we're going to figure it out, and then we'll eventually get to a place that we just won't have issues anymore. You spend enough time together, you figure it out. But it's finding that peace in the differences and actually relishing in that and recognizing they are them and you are you, and you're winding together in this relationship you've agreed on.
Yeah, and it goes back to control, right? Like when you, like that whole issue you just described, it just goes back to control, and you can't control.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm seeing the theme.
yeah, right. Me too. I wasn't always this wise. That's funny.
Oh man.
But yeah.
So in thinking of this, like we've run through a lot of the questions that I posed. I'm curious, is there anything that I usually ask this question as well, as if you had the ears of young individuals, and maybe this goes against even what we've been talking about, that if you could tell them something or instill a seed for young listeners or for young individuals, is there something that you would instill with them? And would that be any different than the people that are currently listening, maybe adults or other parents? Is there information you want them to take from this conversation, or a takeaway?
I think best way to say it would be, if I were to share my thoughts, right? Just focus on yourself, man. Like if you can truly love to be in your own company, you know what I mean? Then that's when you're ready for somebody else to come in and be a bonus to that company, because you have to love yourself first.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people, man, just through programming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Environment issues, and just, there's actually a system too to keep us just in a negative thought process that would enable us from, loving ourselves as well. But yeah, just continue to focus on yourself. The moment you start focusing on yourself and loving yourself, then you'll realize how much more accurate things start coming into your reality. You know what I mean? So that's probably the only thing I would advise younger children, because everything else is just kind of, their own challenges and experiences that was meant for them to go through, because everything happens for us, not to us. And sometimes it's hard to see the lesson because the emotions are involved, or we feel like we suffered a loss or anything like that. But yeah, and because, looking back at all of our experiences that we would consider negative back then, did you not experience any tremendous growth after, getting through that? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's just all it is for some of you youngsters out there, man. It's just putting you on a better path. Those challenges are just putting you on a better path towards what you want. Just have to truly believe that. And, the only way that you can do that is by being tuned in with yourself.
I love that, loving yourself and being tuned in, because really, if you love yourself, you can address what I like, what I don't like, who I am right now, who I'm growing into.
And you're not outsourcing to make you happy from within. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You already cured it. You already know who you are. You already know what's about.
Yeah.
It's just like prescription, we don't need it. Your body's the most advanced chemical, composition there is out there. We don't need medicine. We can heal it from within. But, unfortunately, that just goes back to what I said, that there's definitely a business made of, to outsource everything, outsource for love, outsource for medical care, outsource for everything. But really, it's just all from within,
And in therapy terms, we often use that as differentiation. Yeah. You can be a different person while also being in a relationship, and that is super important, because you can stand on your own while also wanting a relationship, and can give and take in this back and forth. But when you feel like your only support is the other person, there's turmoil in the relationship. Right. There can't be turmoil in the relationship, because you will lose your leg. You will lose your ability to stand on your own.
Yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, though. If you do need the outsource help, you know what I mean, then, talk to whoever you need to. To get that
absolutely.
help.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time, shifting from dad mode to interview mode.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this. So,
Yeah,
cool.
me too.
I just enjoyed our conversation during our session, and I'm just glad that you had me here. So
yeah, and I appreciate you being one of the first that brings in just information on how you approach life, how you approach parenting, how you approach relationships.
Cool,
I want to be able to give more of this as a way for listeners to listen and go, oh, that's how Leki does this. That's how the people I'll have on the podcast later, that's how they do this. That's not right or wrong. That's just how they do that. And I can take what is going to be important so I can see what's good for me.
Yeah. No, it's important that we share this because, it's obvious that there's an imbalance out there, of negativity and all that. And, for us to put information out there that can help people, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
cool.
Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you.
Well, thanks, Birds and Bees podcast listeners. Hive mates, you guys are awesome. Thanks for the support you've had over the last couple of years where we've had more of a hiatus. I'm looking forward to get you more information and great interviews like this in future meetings. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook or on Instagram, and let's answer those questions and continue working through this as hive mates together. We all grow up and together. So we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks.